Now, when we come in and work with an agency, those 15 to 20 hours are very dedicated. So, if you're hiring somebody 40 hours, there's going to be some waste time in there as well. So consider that as well. But if you are the agency owner and you're still doing account management, but you have a handful of clients on deck, then you're probably spending more time than you would think when it comes to account management.
Welcome to the Happy Clients Podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to Happy Clients.
So we often get asked how much time is needed for a client account manager inside an agency. And usually that's a reflection on how much time is currently being spent inside the agency by usually the agency owner. So today we want to dive in and chat about those realistic calculations and what time is needed for a client account manager inside a thriving agency.
So oftentimes when I'm chatting with agency owners, they come to me and they're generally either they're doing the account management or they have an account manager. And they might say, okay, well, how many hours am I even spending? Like, how do I even calculate that? Because if in option A, you are the agency owner, you have so many things on your plate. You're doing HR, accounting, invoicing, sales, marketing, account management, media buying, all of it. So like what portion of that is account management? So some things that we like to look at is, of course, the scope of account managers. So firstly, client meetings.
Mm-hmm. And I think even before that, what is just a best practice is for agency owners to really look at how they structure their day and how they're communicating to clients. I think that actually looks a little bit different than a dedicated person for client account management. So it can be tricky to sort of have these very obvious parts of your day dedicated to client account management. But if we do break out the scope and see what a client account management can help with, that's a great first step. So looking at that scope, meetings is a huge time suck for a lot of agency owners. And sometimes it's even more ad hoc, more let's hop on the phone and discuss something rather than a weekly routine meeting where you're giving updates, going through reports. So it can really seem daunting that you're spending all this time on client account management meetings, time suck, but really it's not an effective use of your time. So looking at that scope, meetings is definitely number one. How much time are you spending on those meetings versus even a realistic look at what you should be spending on meetings? But that is definitely a great place to start.
Mm-hmm. Secondly, a lot of agency owners say, like, I just can't keep up with my email inbox. Like, people are emailing me. I just don't have the time to A, have meetings, and then B, be responding to all these people. So think about how much time you spend in your inbox. And these things can be tracked if you automate it and, things like that, like how much time you actually spent in your Gmail. That's super important. Or how much time should you be, right? Like if you're not actually delivering on all the client requests, like maybe you need to be spending more time. So maybe that's something to add into your calculation as well. So what we find is that as an account manager, we are responsible for all those client back and forths, whether it's on email, Slack, text, I don't know, all those things that are kind of being jumbled all throughout the day. That's a huge time suck.
Totally. And I think setting up those boundaries and having that dedicated person just sort of organically does that. But having one person kind of in charge of that and really knowing what time should be dedicated, living in the space, knowing what's happening rather than sort of pivoting all over the place is so beneficial to an agency because it can just be a better use of time. So in terms of calculating, you can certainly see that there is room for improvement when things are more streamlined.
Exactly. The third thing is client onboarding. So we all know when you onboard a new client, you might think it doesn't take much time, but there's so much back and forth between kickoff calls, gaining assets, gaining access to everything, making sure contracts are signed, everything that goes into it. There's a lot. So if you think about how many new clients you're bringing on a monthly basis, even 1 to 3, that's a huge amount of time. So think about, at least a few hours of onboarding per client. That's going to be taking your time.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think the onboarding does take longer than people generally think. There's so much back and forth, especially knowing that a lot of these agencies want to work with like very new entrepreneurs sometimes, or people just kind of launching a business or a new product or something. And that's a lot of back and forth to get everything you need and make sure that they're ready and they're set up properly. So when you do kind of get to the marketing ad launch phase, you're set up for success. So that's a huge part of it as well. And I think more to the calculation part, I always encourage people to think about where the agency is growing. How many people do you want to take on? Of course, the answer is usually as many as possible, or maybe 2 to 3 every week. So really put that into your calculations. Make sure you're thinking about that growth as you sort of look at these numbers for client account managers.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to think about is reporting. So we see a lot of agency owners or account managers spending hours a week on reporting, and we do this because it is a key piece of the account management role. So if you find that you're spending a lot of times pulling numbers, sending Loom videos, sending things to clients, ensuring that they're up to speed, that is a huge time suck as well that you need to consider. And that is definitely inside of that account management scope.
Definitely. And I think more to that as well, or something else you should be thinking about is the processes. Something like reporting, and what is the process, and what is the spreadsheet for that, and where does that all go, and what is the sort of, how does it look, and where do you get it? So having processes in place helps. A lot of time people come to us and they really, really want those SOPs built out, which is definitely something we do in those early days working with any agency. So kind of knowing what to expect as it's coming through. So that's onboarding versus launch versus, reporting, kind of knowing that all those things are coming down the pipeline in a really organized way. Again, I feel like I'm really promoting like efficiency and organization and being streamlined, but it does really help when you're calculating the time to have everything in one place. You know what's coming next, you know how long it'll take, and really documenting that. So having really well set up SOPs is super important.
So where we see the most time being spent from the agency owner is they're jumbling so many things. The account management piece is what we think is really, really important inside the agency, but it's almost being tossed to the side because they're so focused on getting new clients or, doing more marketing, getting on more podcasts, things like that. They're neglecting kind of that client experience. So in a bigger agency, we see generally anywhere from 20 hours, maybe 15 hours a week is kind of a good amount of account management support that most agencies need who are in kind of that growth phase. Anywhere from 10 to 15 clients, would you say, Katie?
Yep.
In that range is kind of the amount of time that we see most agencies. Now, when we come in and work with an agency, those 15 to 20 hours are very dedicated. So, if you're hiring somebody 40 hours, there's going to be some waste time in there as well. So consider that as well. But if you are the agency owner and you're still doing account management, but you have a handful of clients on deck, then you're probably spending more time than you would think when it comes to account management.
Totally. And something to mention too is the type of client. Just as you said that, Taylor, I was thinking like, these bigger funnels, something like a course launch, something like an evergreen sort of list build or something like that. Those are campaigns that just take more dedicated time for everybody. They're ongoing, the content has to be refreshed, building audiences, and even reporting too. So thinking like e-commerce clients versus, these kind of high ticket courses, their funnels actually look completely different and can be longer and more intricate. So thinking about that during these calculations too. So 10 to 15 clients can look a little bit different just depending on what they're doing.
Exactly, for sure. So that's all we have to say about calculating account management time. It is tricky to calculate, but if you look at kind of what our scope is, we can put that in the show notes. That'll give you a good idea to start to think about maybe marking down how much time you're spending on all these tasks on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And that'll give you a good amount of time, how much account management support you need to really step into that CEO role or to be able to grow your agency. And of course, we are here to help you with anything you need account management wise, whether it's hiring an account manager, training your account manager, or just getting access to all of our SOPs and our trainings. So reach out if you have any questions. And thank you so much for listening into another episode of the Happy Clients Podcast.
Cheers to happy clients.